It's time for Spiritual Awakening Radio. My name is James Bean of spiritualawakeningradio.com. Tips for the Gnostic spiritual seeker today. Gnostic is such an abused word, hijacked and repurposed by content creators or demiurges. It's important to know what Gnosticism is, as well as what it is not. On the web is much of what I call Gnostic nonsense. People call all sorts of subjects Gnostic. Apparently everything's Gnostic except for actual Gnosticism. That most don't have time for. That's the subject that doesn't quite get covered. That remains the forbidden topic, a mystery that always seems to remain concealed, as souls prefer the shiny things of distraction. Time to rebel against the archon occupation. In this online world of clickbait sensationalism and cultic exploitation, can the teachings of Gnostic spirituality along with their ancient texts be heard, be appreciated, instead of distorted by influencers? My take is simply to let the Gnostics be Gnostic, treating them equally like any other world religion, where you examine their beliefs and you look up their texts and you find out what they believe and understand their spiritual practices, as well as where they fit into history, in order to understand just exactly what the original spiritual movements labeled Gnostic, in this case, actually taught based on what they themselves have to say about that. Not what other esoteric groups coming into being millennia later do with their teachings as they cook in their own particular theological and cultic cultural cauldron of bias somewhere in Europe or the US. As I view the saga of the Gnostics, the treatment of the true classic Nag Hammadi Gnostics of antiquity, the only solution is to let the Gnostics be Gnostic. Truly listen to their voices, embedded in the surviving texts that come directly from them, and allow them to speak for themselves, define their own beliefs, their own ethical diet and spiritual practices. Then others may truly benefit from their wisdom, and in that sense, Gnosticism as a spiritual path can potentially reincarnate into the world again. Or far more likely, and best of all, help spiritual seekers of authenticity recognize those who already may be following a living gnosis now in the modern age. Today we explore the Gnostic Gospels, a history of the destruction of wisdom, the dry canals where Gnostic waters never seem to flow. I'll share with you some recommended reading, free books online. It's not always a matter of joining some organization or buying a ticket or taking a course. Spirituality, including Gnostic spirituality, should be free and available to everyone on the planet. 3 kinds of people there are in the world according to the Valentinian Gnostics: hedonists and Gnostic cave dwellers, somewhere in time, weird Christianities from other places and timelines with their own gospels and unique spiritualities. I say weird Christianities, I mean this in a good way, as in fascinating, valuable sources of wisdom, mostly hidden, ignored, and forgotten. The scriptures of the East and West I enjoy the most are books hardly anyone has ever heard of. Yes, the Nag Hammadi is where they found the Gnostic Gospels, but within you is where you will find the Gnosis, what spiritual practice looks like in Gnosticism, the altered state of meditation, according to Gnostics, masters, saints, and mystics. Tips for the Gnostic spiritual seeker today on Spiritual Awakening Radio. Muhammad Ali al-Saman, his brother, and some other family members were the ones that found the jar, that dug up the jar containing the Nag Hammadi Coptic codices back in 1945. Muhammad Ali al-Saman took this pile of manuscripts home and sat them next to the family wood stove. You know where this is going if you're familiar with this story already. Muhammad Ali al-Saman's mother would often grab a few pages of Coptic texts to use them for kindling in the morning to light the family wood stove and make tea, perhaps do some cooking. No doubt it was very nice tea, very tasty, brewed thanks to the sacrifice of a few pages of some unknown and now lost forever Nag Hammadi pages, perhaps from the Gospel of Mary Magdalene or lost book of 3rd Allegenus. The misplacing, forgetting, and random pointless destruction of wisdom is all very much part of the story of Gnosticism here on planet Earth. But perhaps we can remain hopeful, like the author of the Gospel of Thomas, who once said, "Know what is before your face, and what is hidden from you will be revealed to you. For there is nothing hidden which will not be revealed, nor anything buried which will not be raised." Saying 5 from the Greek Oxyrhynchus edition of the Gospel of Thomas, practically predicting its own rediscovery, since this very saying, this very book, was once buried and then got raised, and now you can read it for free on the World Wide Web. Weird Christianities from other places and timelines, with their own gospels and unique spiritualities. I say weird Christianities, I mean this in a good way, as in fascinating, valuable sources of wisdom, mostly hidden, ignored, and forgotten. The scriptures of the East and West I enjoy, as I mentioned before, are books hardly anyone has ever heard of. The writings left behind in this weird Christianities category consist of alternative gospels, collections of psalms, letters, scores of acts, revelations, and further to the east, even some sutras of spiritual wisdom that rival Taoist or Buddhist scriptures. Rather than being just a small number of extra apocryphal or extra canonical books rejected by the mainstream, this is really, what we're looking at here really is a vast library, actually several libraries of texts. We're talking hundreds of books. And I mean closer to 1,000 than 100 or 200. A lot of books. Some of the scriptures of what's been called by some the other Bible or lost books of the Bible, someone else's scripture in antiquity, are quite spiritual and mystical. Some of these books are wonderful. Required reading for those seeking an honest history beyond limited sectarian, denominational belief systems. For a longer period of time than the U.S. has been a country, as in centuries, there was no such thing in early Christianity as a closed canon of Scripture. Even now, the number of books and contents of the Bible itself somewhat varies from place to place, east and west, with the Ethiopian Bible being the most colorful of all, containing a total of 84 books, and their collections of extra and semi-canonical writings number in the hundreds. Some of these might be called lost books, but many of them have never been lost. They've always been read by Christians, copied by Christians. There are manuscripts in Armenian, Greek, Russian, Coptic, the language of Ethiopia, and the Arab language in Arabic as well. All of these different places in the Middle East and Near East and Far East. These writings have, in many cases, always been around and read by Christians, copied by Christians, and that's why we can access them today. You can read most of them for free online if you know where to look. Safe journeys to you as you make up your own mind, and do what thou wilt, crossing the ocean of this world of samsara, the temporal world of changes. Recommended reading. Free books online. You don't need to take a course. You don't need to buy a ticket. You don't need to join an organization. You don't need to pay membership dues to access these scriptures. You can read them for free online, and that's the way it should be. Spirituality, like sunlight, should be available freely to all. No sensational thing to click on about banned books forbidden by the church. No sensational headlines. Everybody should just find the books. They're online. You can read them for free right now. Recommended reading. Free books online. There's a site called gnosis.org, gnosis.org, that's been a go-to source for many years where you can read Gnostic Gospels. As of late, another website has come upon the scene where you can read multiple translations of the Gospel of Thomas and Nag Hammadi texts, various translations of the Bible, eventually the Dead Sea Scrolls, and lots of other apocryphal texts, Gnostic texts included. Othergospels.com. You can access online the Gospel of Thomas, a collection of 114 sayings of Jesus, circulating in early Christianity, quoted by church fathers, Syrian saints and mystics, quoted in other apocryphal writings, a most amazing other stream of the sayings of Jesus circulating in early Christianity from North Africa to India and points in between. The Gospel of Thomas. An important fact-checking book. I believe that religions should be fact-checked by scholars who come to our rescue to save us from some of that Gnostic nonsense I was referring to earlier. There's a wonderful book by M. David Litwa called Found Christianities that provides for us an update, some updated scholarship on the Gnostic Christian schools of spirituality that existed during the 2nd century in places like Alexandria, Egypt. Gnosticism isn't about just reading texts and then that's it, declaring victory. That's it. We're done. Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. In ancient times, there were living teachers in schools of spirituality connected with earlier teachers. The teacher had a teacher. That teacher also had a teacher in a kind of apostolic succession. So it's a form of accreditation, not always perfect, but far better than what we do in the West. You know, somebody will declare themselves some sort of Facebook messiah, print up some business cards, create a page somewhere, and go messianic. They got messianic intentions. They answer to no one, a one-man cult. So the idea of a spiritual lineage, very much like in the East, is an attempt to have ethical standards and accreditation to bring some legitimacy to the process of spiritual teachers. If someone is a spiritual teacher, they themselves should also have had a spiritual teacher. And that's the way Gnosticism operated. During the 2nd century, living teachers would teach and write scriptures, but they also would initiate people into the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. They would have sacred names and meditation practices, spiritual practices that lead people to their own experience of gnosis. Not just learn information on the internet or read a book. A living teacher communicating spiritual techniques that one could learn and experience the world of gnosis for themselves. Found Christianities by M. David Litwa is a great book all about like many, dozens, scores actually, of schools of spirituality, saying their names, putting their names in print. There are people that wrote these texts. We get to find out who they were and some honest history about them. in the book Found Christianities. Other recommended reading: Odes of Solomon, a Rumi-like collection of psalms right at the crossroads of 1st century A.D., Essene Judaism, of the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Jesus movement, and Gnosticism. The First New Testament, Marcion's scriptural canon, Proto-Luke and 10 earlier versions, less edited versions of Paul's letters. The Book of First Enoch, the prophet, the Nag Hammadi Library in English, or the Marvin Meyer edition called the Nag Hammadi Scriptures. A book called the Jesus Sutras of China. I mentioned those earlier, a collection of spiritual wisdom found in China, writings of the 7th century. The Acts of the Apostle Thomas in India. I have my own e-library. In the bottom right-hand corner of my website, spiritualawakeningradio.com, you'll see a link to my library. And again, othergospels.com, gnosis.org, and you can find other sites as well online where you can read all kinds of texts online, from Gnostic, Nag Hammadi sources, apocryphal writings, Dead Sea Scrolls, all of these things for free on the web. If you're looking for something in particular, send me an email. I'll be happy to send you a link to whatever you're looking for in particular. James at spiritualawakeningradio.com. More to come. Stay tuned. Gnostic tips for the spiritual seeker today on Spiritual Awakening Radio. Nag Hammadi is where they found the Gnostic Gospels. Oddly enough, that's also the title of an old episode of the television series Gilmore Girls, released many years ago, Season 4, Episode 13. And you know what? Absolutely nothing Gnostic was said during that episode. I kid you not. For me, this is symbolic of how Gnosticism has been treated in many public spaces. The word is invoked. But nope, no time for Gnosticism. The last Gnostic guest was interviewed 4 years ago, and we're all out of time. See you next week. A subject that doesn't quite get covered, isn't explored as a spiritual path. Clickbait headlines or titles, sure, but a spiritual path that people can learn, that had an ethical code, has a history, a practice one can learn. Nope, not there. The dry canals where Gnostic waters never seem to flow. It's important to know what Gnosticism is as well as what it is not. On the web is much of what I call Gnostic nonsense, GNONSENSE. People call all sorts of topics Gnostic. All sorts of paranormal subjects are called Gnostic. Lore, astral, something or another's that go bump or maybe even beep in the night as somehow being Gnostic. There are those who relabel countless unrelated subjects or topics as Gnostic. Spiders seem to build their nests near the light. Everything's Gnostic except for actual Gnosticism. The spiritual seeker soon gets weary of slog after slog, searching in vain in all the wrong places. But is this not the whole point of this psyops, demiurgical, archonic, cosmic conspiracy game of telephone in the first place? To wear you down before you even can begin? To run out the clock of time? I believe yes. In this world of illusion, or Maya. Bishop Irenaeus, the Gnostic heresy hunter, zealously would agree. Gnosticism remains tragically, woefully unexplored, unknown, existing in a far country, a mystic realm, and a mythic realm called Gnostic land, revealed by sages who remain unnamed, discussed in expensive, unattainable textbooks, published in the Netherlands for hundreds of dollars each. Of these dry Gnostic canals, the author of the Apocalypse of Peter writes, "And there shall be others of those who are outside our number, who name themselves bishops and also deacons, as if they have received their authority from God. They bend themselves under the judgment of the leaders. Those people are dry canals." From the aptly named Apocalypse of Peter from Codex 7 of the Nag Hammadi Library of Egypt. They bend themselves under the algorithms and call themselves leaders. The demiurge has a bag of tricks. The cruel hand of fate dualistically doles out ups and downs, fair weather and foul, good days and bad upon one's lower subtle body coverings. But in the end, it's all just Mercury retrograde, my friend. Gnostic exploitation. So much of that. There are three kinds of people in the world, according to the Valentinian Gnostics. I've always found this to be accurate. Spot on. The three kinds of people in the world. The Valentinian threefold designation of people as hylics, psychics, and pneumatics. People of fleshly body, soul, and spirit. That's a quote from Marvin Meyer in the Nag Hammadi scriptures. I've always thought of this tripartite view of humanity as being quite accurate, really. We have the hylics, the people of matter or materialists, the psychics or of the soul, and the pneumatics, the spiritual, from the Greek word for spirit. Psychics of the soul are sort of in the in-between category between spiritual and material realms, with some belief in supernatural possibilities, and this category also includes people following one religion or another. Mystics in the world are few. Gnostics in the world are few, but followers of religions are many. Pneumatics are the mystics, and they're in the mystics category, those who are knowers or Gnostics, experiencers, in addition to whatever their intellectual beliefs might be about God, heavens, universes, souls, and whatnot. My only concern with what might have been said in old Gnostic texts is over the question of who has a soul. If some of those folks were espousing the view that not everyone has a soul or the same kind of soul, I would strongly disagree with that, believing that everyone has a soul. Everyone is a soul incarnate. But if they're saying that many people are stuck at the level of the five senses and the outer material world, only believe what they happen to see, the hylics, or are attached to various theological ideas but don't experience the things they believe about God and the heavens, angels and whatnot, so it's all just abstract theory to them in the psychics category, then I do agree with that. Gnostics weren't anti-intellectual and had lots of ideas, lots of scriptures too. But their goal was to experience, to know, not just talk about God and heavens and angels and higher realms, but to experience those and to know oneself. One begins with faith, but then moves on to gnosis, to be spiritual, pneumatic. Through an initiation into the mysteries, gain access to one's spiritual senses, which can have perception of the beyond, spiritual seeing, spiritual hearing. One becomes an explorer of heavenly realms. Gnostic texts are filled with descriptions of visionary and auditory experiences and the ascension of the soul through various heavenly realms. I believe animals also have souls, which is one of the reasons why I'm vegan. being heavily influenced by Neoplatonism and Pythagoreanism, the teachings of Pythagoras and his followers. The Gnostics were veg or vegan. See the last verses of the Nag Hammadi book, The Prayer of Thanksgiving, for evidence of vegetarianism in the Nag Hammadi scriptures. And here's a vegan saying from the golden verses of Pythagoras, a Pythagorean saying quoted by several ancient sources. A light, meatless diet sharpens one's spiritual perception, while a diet containing meat weighs the soul down. That's a passage found in the golden verses of Pythagoras. The Golden Verses of Pythagoras, published by one of those expensive book companies, E.J. Brill of the Netherlands. The Mandaean ascension of the soul is about the soul's journey through several different heavens, meeting beings along the way. But you know, it also, this very scripture, this is from the Mandaean Gnostic Ginzarabba, the great treasure of Mandaean Gnosticism. My goal is to reach the place of life. I am flying, advancing until I reach the first guardian. The servants of the first guardian came to me. They said, "Let us take this man with us as our captive. He might serve as a companion to us." They asked me, "Hail, companion, where did you come from? Where do you go?" The reply, the Gnostic soul says, "I came from the earth. I am going to Heyi," a Mandaean name for the Supreme Being, the Great Life. "And my path is to the place of life." They said, "This is the place of life. Here it is. So why do you need to go anyplace else?" I said to myself, I am not one of them. If I stayed with them, I would endure every torment. This is not what my soul desires and wants. The soul within me yearns for the great life. The soul within me demands God. The soul demands, yearns for the great life. My goal is to reach the place of life. This passage from the Ginzarabba, the great treasure of the Mandaean scriptures, speaks of the soul's encounter as it ascends through various heavenly realms. And in each of these, the soul meets these characters saying, "You've made it. You've reached the true heaven. Welcome, friend. Join us. Become one of us." But the soul realizes, no, this is just realm number 3, realm number 4, realm number 5, heaven number 6, and does not wish to get stuck there, views them all as detours along the way. And so the soul keeps ascending and ascending until it reaches its true home. And you know, spiritual paths in the world are like that. Each one is trying to recruit for various states of consciousness, learn magical powers to manipulate material reality, get excited about astral goings-on, come to the true thought in the cerebral world of the mental plane, the true doctrine, the true learned knowledge, and so on. There's a religion for every temperament. You know, emotional religions, cerebral religions, you name it, it's out there. There's a religion for every chakra. There's a religion for every subtle body. There's a religion looking to recruit people for the astral plane, the causal plane, the mental plane, all of these realms and regions. And spiritual paths are like that. And the Gnostic soul sometimes reaches a point where it says, you know, I'm not one of these guys, and has a kind of painful experience of changing religions, moving on to something else. I'm not one of them, and I would be very tormented if I stayed with these people another minute. And this is quite often the journey of the true Gnostic, spiritual seeker, moving on, onward and upward towards the goal. The hidden realm of Gnostic land, the seed of true humanity, is only to be found within you via the seat of the soul, the third eye, the single eye, in another kind of sky. Despite some of this wry humor up to now, the above picture does sound kind of bleak for our beleaguered Gnostic spiritual seeker, shopping for Gnostic books at the dollar store. But after all, that is just another bad dream. And we can awaken from that dream. As Carl Jung once said, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. Valentinus of the Gospel of Truth, happy is the one who comes to himself and awakens. Everyone has their own third eye, whether they know it or not. Through the divine path of initiation, one will learn of the spiritual practices that make it possible to access the third eye center, the seat of the soul, within the temple of the human body. We will discover for ourselves the mysteries of the Spirit. The kingdom of the heavens will open up before us on this inward journey of the soul as we travel through vast realms of light, sound, and love on our way back to God. Kirpal Singh once said, awakened souls always draw our attention to the fact that we are being deceived. If at all there is anything true and eternal, if at all there's anything true or eternal, it is the soul, or the oversoul, the soul and God, in other words. If your eye becomes single, your whole body shall be full of light, a quote from Yeshua, Gospel of Matthew. The seat of the soul in this temple of the human body is the third eye center. The soul is currently situated at the back of the eye center, and therefore saints say that you start from there. You start focusing there and focus your attention where the soul is. And the Master says this is at the back of the eye center. That's a quote from Baba Ram Singh. We have to focus at the third eye center and look within and begin a spiritual journey beyond the material plane, beyond the mind, beyond books, beyond beliefs. At some point, we begin our spiritual practice. We put the book down, close our eyes, and go within. This is from Joseph the Visionary, a Syriac mystic, on singleness of vision. Thus, as a result of recollecting all these things, the impulses of the mind are extended from the sphere of material things towards those impulses which are without limit, that is to say, wonder at the new world, and the faculty of vision which belongs to contemplation of God. For when the vision of the mind is mingled with the light, all its impulses become infinite. For none of the visionaries or Gnostics is able to distinguish the identity of the mind as a result of the vision of that glorious light that is seen. For all the innermost chambers of the heart are filled by that blessed light. Joseph the Visionary, a Syriac Gnostic, quoted in the book The Syriac Fathers on Prayer and the Spiritual Life. As it says in Pistis Sophia, do not cease seeking day or night, and do not let yourselves relax until you find the mysteries of the kingdom of light, which will purify you and make you into pure light and lead you into the kingdom of the light. In the Nag Hammadi library is a book called Trimorphic Proto-Noah, a Sethian Gnostic text from the Nag Hammadi library. In it, it contains 5 sacred names of God, very Hebrew-sounding names, actually, embedded in a Coptic text. And these names also correspond with 5 heavenly realms above. So when one is instructed to repeat them, it's kind of like hitting the buttons of an elevator. You know, the first name corresponds to heaven number 1, second name heaven number 2, third name heaven number 3, fourth name heaven number 4, fifth name heaven number 5, an ascension, a sense of ascension. And this is part of the spiritual practice of Gnosticism, an initiation into the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, a series of spiritual techniques pertaining to inner seeing and inner hearing, an inner ascension of the soul. Meditate on the true name and rise within, just like ascending a staircase. Listen to the music of the heavens. Ascend on the lifeline of the sound current as a spider climbs up the thread. The quote from one of the hymns, the mystic hymns of Baba Somanath. Become passers-by, a mysterious saying found in the Gospel of Thomas, saying 42. Become passers-by. Some have wondered what this saying really means. Another translation renders it, come into being as you pass away. That's from the Gospel of Thomas, Wisdom of the Twin by Lynn Bauman. In other words, by meditation practice, get established, come into being in the heavenly realms as a spiritual being during this life, finding a permanent home there instead of remaining attached to this temporal world of changes. And there is another version of this saying found in India, inscribed on a mosque and attributed to Jesus, or Isa. The world is a bridge. Pass over it, but do not build your dwelling there. Yes, the Nag Hammadi is where they found the Gnostic Gospels, but within you is where you will find the Gnosis. Often spiritual seekers are described as like the living dead, zombies thinking they're alive but they're not, or in a state of spiritual slumber. Often spiritual teachers describe souls who reach a breakthrough in consciousness, an awakening at some point, after the soul reaches a stage in its mystic travels where it becomes free of all its lower coverings of mind and matter. It reaches an awakening, a realization of its true nature as spirit, and exclaims, I am that, I am that, I am that, I am that. The medieval mystic Kabir once said, the light of one's soul is equal to that of 16 suns. But to sleeping humanity, this reality remains completely hidden from view. We are gods clothed in rags and haven't even gotten around to studying the Gnostic Gospels that might suggest other states of consciousness are in existence and are an option for us. Meditation is a kind of temporary death to the outer world of the 5 senses, as well as outer images, impressions, and thoughts. When one fasts from the world and enters into this kind of Sabbath rest, it finds true rest. It becomes possible for the soul to begin to perceive something of the other world that it inhabits. Now we are seated with Christ in heavenly places, as Paul is attributed, saying of Paul from the New Testament. The soul's spiritual senses begin to perceive in the heavenly realms. One becomes progressively more and more receptive to the heavenly sound and light with eyes and ears of the soul. The Gnostic system of heavens map out the journey of meditation through the inner regions. Who are the living ones who are explorers? Who are the explorers of inner space, the kingdom of the heavens within? Those who practice this form of meditation and make this journey? You know, most of the living spiritual teachers who embody this kind of spirituality don't even call themselves Gnostics, even though they are the most authentic examples of living gnosis now on the planet. They just happen to have been part of an unbroken chain of spiritual masters that have been around for many generations, millennia actually. The names of their spiritual movements keep changing. The word gnosis is translated from one language into another, from west to east along the Silk Road, as the centuries go flying past. But they continue to preserve and practice this kind of living mystic path, the path of the masters. Everyone has their own third eye, whether they realize it or not. Through the divine path of initiation, one will learn of the spiritual practices that make it possible to access the third eye center, the seat of the soul within the temple of the human body. Where else would you want to begin? Where else is there? What else would matter, would be important as a spiritual practice, but to begin going within, realizing yourself and ascending above? What else is there? We will discover for ourselves the mysteries of the Spirit if we follow the directions of the initiation instructions. The kingdom of the heavens will open up before us on this inward journey of the soul as we travel through vast realms of light, sound, and love on our way back to God. The goal of this path is not simply going to the various inner planes or heavens of creation, but to pass through them on our way back to the Most High Supreme Being, the Nameless One, who has been given many names. As it says in the Odes of Solomon, whoever joins the immortal becomes immortal. Whoever delights in the living one becomes living. The saints of the East, the Sants of the East, have said the light and sound are within everyone, and that over the centuries there have been mystics within the various world religions, the mystic core of the various world religions with inner light and sound meditation. These schools of spirituality have operated from time to time, east and west. I've collected many of their writings, in fact. This includes Christianity. For instance, this example from the writings of Joseph the Visionary, a Syriac Gnostic mystic. He says, "We say that we see light in the sphere of spirituality, but this is not like material light. We also say that we have spiritual food there, but that food is not like what we have here. We further say that our mind perceives there the sound of the spiritual hosts, and that it is there that speech and conversation occur, but that speech is not like the speech, not like the language we have with one another here. The sound heard there by our mind is so ethereal that our senses are not able to receive it, and a fleshly tongue is unable to speak or tell that which is revealed there to the understanding." The third eye in meditation. Close your eyes as in sleep and look sweetly, lovingly, intently into the middle of the darkness lying in front of you. You will see a dark veil. That which sees the dark veil within without the help of your physical eyes is the inner eye. One of my favorite quotes from Kripal Singh. It is in the darkness that one finds the light, said Master Eckhart of Germany. The light which I see God. The eye through which I see God is the same eye through which God sees me. My eye and God's eye are one eye, one seeing, one knowing, one love. Another passage from Meister Eckhart. This is from the Mandaean Canonical Prayer Book, also known as the Kolasta. I wander about searching after my soul, which is worth ages and worlds to me. I went and found my soul. What are all the worlds to me? Within this earthen vessel are bowers and groves, and within it is the Creator. Within this vessel are the 7 oceans and the unnumbered stars. The touchstone and the jewel appraiser are within. And within this vessel the eternal soundeth, and the spring wells up. Says Kabir, listen to me, my friend, my beloved Lord is within. From the mystic poetry of Kabir. The altered state of meditation within this body. A mystic poem of Sant Tulsi Sahib of Hathras, India, 19th century mystic. As I keep saying, the Roman Empire never fell and Gnosticism was never wiped out. The last Gnostic scripture, instead of being authored in the 4th century, was written last Tuesday. Well, this is from the 19th century. A mystic poem of Sant Tulsi Sahib. Within this body breathes the secret essence. Within this body beats the heart of the scriptures. Within this body shines the entire universe. So the saints reveal. Hermits, ascetics, celibates, all are lost, seeking him in endless guises. Seers and sages perfectly parrot the scriptures and holy books, blinded by knowledge. Their pilgrimage, their fasting and striving, but delude. Despite their perfect practice, they discover no destination. Only the saints who know the body's heart have attained the ultimate, O Tulsi. Realize this and you've found your freedom, while teachers trapped in tradition only know the mirage in the mirror. Tips for the Gnostic spiritual seeker today on Spiritual Awakening Radio. Welcome to our 4th and final segment. This is a paragraph from my website and a spiritual quote from a spiritual teacher who passed on in 2007. This is from the Sant Mot section of my website, spiritualawakeningradio.com. The 3rd level of satsang. The word satsang means a deliberate, conscious effort to associate oneself with the eternal truth. So no UFOs, no Bigfoot, no Gnostic things that go bump in the night. The one and only topic is the spirituality communicated by living teachers or past teachers, pertaining to the spiritual journey of the soul back to the Supreme Being. That's the one and only topic, the one and only topic that is the focus. There are 3 levels of satsang. The 3rd level is studying scriptures. The 2nd level is associating with a living teacher and living school of spirituality. And the 1st level of satsang is absorption in the divine, associating with God. In daily life, we need the guidance of a great sage or saint. Even though we might encounter many so-called teachers or sadhus, the task of finding and identifying an accomplished guide is tricky. So, in consideration of this, how would satsang, association with a true saint, be possible? The answer is that we can study the teachings of the great saints of the past, because in their education we will find the elaboration of the truth. This, then, is the 3rd category of satsang. Generally, when we speak of satsang, this 3rd category is meant. This kind of satsang includes the study of scriptures and the words and writings of the saints and prophets of the past. Swami Sant Seviji Maharaj, as we continue diligently in this 3rd type of satsang, we accumulate the meritorious karmas, leading eventually to the meeting with a true saint. Then we will be able to do the 2nd category of satsang. As we continue in association with the great saint and with the saint's blessings, we will gradually begin to meditate and undertake the prescribed spiritual disciplines. By diligently practicing these disciplines, we will experience the 1st category of satsang, association with the Supreme Being. When we have thus accomplished the highest category of satsang, our life's purpose is fulfilled. Hedonists and Gnostic cave dwellers somewhere in time. The classic Gnostic soul struggled against the cruel hand of fate, astral archons, rulers, principalities, powers, emperors, and bishops. The Gnostic teachings from the Coptic and Greek period have quite an ascetic tone. The material universe is evil. Be not of this world. Holy texts were studied by Pachomian monks in Upper Egypt. The discovery site of the Gnostic Gospels was near some caves. On the walls of some of those caves are examples of graffiti, crosses, and quotes from spiritual texts scribbled on the walls. You know how I learned about that? I once did an interview with Marvin Meyer. Regrettably, it was the last interview. He passed on. And so that was my one and only interview with Marvin Meyer. But instead of doing an introductory kind of podcast with Marvin Meyer, just sort of, going over the same introductory or rudimentary introductions to the Nag Hammadi library, its discovery, I just was shooting the breeze with Marvin Meyer about anything of interest to me at the time. What's up with the Gnostic vowel chant and the Gospel of the Egyptians and altered states of consciousness? What was in those caves nearby the discovery site of Nag Hammadi? I want to know. And he was saying that there are scriptures scribbled on the walls and crosses, some spiritual graffiti in those caves, like that was a hangout for monks once upon a time. After the 4th century, Gnosis mostly disappears from the scene in the Roman Empire due to extreme persecution from those who paid lip service to phrases like love your enemies and turn the other cheek. But they didn't have a concept of democracy and freedom of religion, freedom for all religions. The Library of Alexandria was burned and the Nag Hammadi library buried. In the East, however, Gnosis continued to develop, evolve, and thrive, taking on more of an ecstatic, poetic ethos during the medieval period. The lower material universe is no longer a prison for those who can freely come and go as they please. This changes everything. A degree of optimism in the air, not just that matter is evil and everything is terrible here, but love for the beloved. I know of some mystics that are very otherworldly and yet can also enjoy looking at the stars, feasting on great Indian food, love the ocean or a beautiful sunset. Very out of this world during meditations, and yet at the same time, we come to see the light of God everywhere, within everyone, in this outer plane of existence as well, all as a result of these advanced meditation experiences. As it says in the Sikh scriptures of India, his presence fills the three worlds. Such extremists we human beings are, either hedonists or cave dwellers. We were meant to go from state to state, from the world of action to the world of contemplation, from the waking state to the dream state to the unconscious state of deep sleep. And there is also the fourth state beyond. This too can be divided or subdivided into several levels or states: astral, causal or akashic, mental, etheric, and spiritual. The true state: timeless, sat, hak, spirit, and truth. Full circle we come. The spiritual state can also be perceived as four different stages, ranging from the drop, the soul remaining separate from the ocean of divine consciousness, to nearness, and all the way to that of oneness, or merging into the divine ocean. Kavalya, oneness, the soul merging into the ocean of love. We have freedom of choice even at that level, if we want to remain an individualized soul, try out becoming one with the Supreme and then going back to the state of an individualized soul again. We have that option. We have that freedom of choice, even there. Know also that the reality has described himself as being the outer and the inner, manifest and unmanifest. He brought the cosmos into being as constituting an unseen realm and a sensory realm, so that we might perceive the inner through our unseen faculties and the outer through our sensory aspect. A quote from Ibn Arabi, the great Sufi teacher, from his spiritual classic, The Bezels of Wisdom. Not an easy balancing act, this concept of having one's feet upon the earth and yet one's third eye soul ascending through the various realms, going toward the great light during spiritual practice each day. Yet everyone will make it back there eventually. The reconciliation of all things, the return of the many back to the one, sooner or later. Some of us are traveling at a faster speed than others, but all will reach there eventually. It's simply a matter of time and how receptive we are to this experience during the present life. Some are in a hurry to return, while others travel much, much, much more slowly, and some are distracted from the goal or don't even realize it is a goal. Guru Nanak once said, "It is for the sake of the God-conscious beings that our true Lord gave us this earth and began this play of birth and death. So look to the living one as long as you live, so that you may not die and seek to see him and be unable to see him." Saying 59 from the Gospel of St. Thomas, who went to India. Saints come into this world and they enlighten us. They remind us of our true home, the home of God Almighty, our true Father. They encourage us to go back, and they motivate us to go back. So we are indeed fortunate to get this human body and get this life, and it is with the grace of God Almighty that we have the company of the Masters, Now we should make the most of that and follow the teachings of the masters and make our efforts to go back to our true home. A quote from Baba Ram Singh of South India from a couple years ago in a booklet of satsang discourses. Tips for the spiritual seeker today on Spiritual Awakening Radio. My name is James Bean of spiritualawakeningradio.com. Thanks for joining me. See you next time for another edition of Spiritual Awakening Radio.